Let me tell you something, when your life shatters, it rarely happens with a bang. It usually happens with a whisper, a silent click as the lock snaps shut, leaving you on the outside, utterly exposed. For me, that click happened on a Monday afternoon at the busiest train station you can imagine, and the person who locked me out was my own son, Michael. I remember the sunlight filtering through the grimy station roof, casting those long, dramatic shadows. I was feeling great, honestly. Michael, my 30-year-old only child, had been so sweet. He'd called me last week, insisting I come down to the city to sign some important legal papers. Papers he claimed that would finally secure the family property for both of us, a trust fund kind of thing. He said, "Mom, I know you hate traveling. I'll take care of everything. Just bring your purse and your ID. I'll handle the luggage. I want you to travel comfortably." Comfortably. What a joke that turned out to be. We arrived at the station with what felt like half my worldly possessions. 2 big suitcases, my travel tote, and a backpack containing everything I needed for the weekend. My phone, my wallet, my emergency medication, and the house keys. Michael was practically buzzing with nervous energy. He kept glancing at his watch, saying we were cutting it close. I noticed he didn't park in the regular short-term lot. He pulled right up to the curb by the entrance, which already felt weird. "Mom, look," he said, beaming. "I'm going to run ahead, check the gate number, and make sure the attendant knows we need assistance with this mountain of bags. You stay right here, watch the luggage, and I'll be back in literally 2 minutes. Don't move." I watched him walk away. He was wearing that expensive leather jacket I bought him for his birthday, the one he insisted was practical despite costing half my retirement savings. He was a handsome man, Michael, tall like his father and usually charming. But something in his pace was off. It was too fast, too determined. He wasn't walking to check a gate, he was fleeing. I stood there for 3 minutes. Then 5. Then 10. The station noise, the whistles, the announcements, the roar of the engines, started to sound less like background noise and more like a rising siren of panic. Where was he? I tried to pull out my phone to call him, but my hand instinctively went to the sling bag I usually wear across my chest. It wasn't there. Then I remembered. "I'll handle the luggage," he'd said. And he had. My small backpack, the one with my phone and my wallet, was neatly tucked inside one of the large suitcases he was supposed to be checking in. All I had was the small clutch purse I carried just for tissues and lipstick tucked under my arm. No cash. No credit cards. No phone. Not even a bottle of water. I was standing in the middle of a major metropolitan train terminal, effectively stranded, with nothing but the clothes on my back and an ID that was now useless for buying a ticket home. At first I felt annoyance. He must have been delayed. He probably lost his way finding the luggage drop-off. He's always been disorganized. But then 15 minutes passed, and the heavy knot of dread began to tighten in my stomach. I stepped away from the pile of bags and looked around wildly. Michael was nowhere. A terrible cold clarity hit me. This wasn't a mistake. This was deliberate. My mind, bless its old, stubborn heart, immediately started running through scenarios. Did he get jumped? Did someone steal the bags? But his face, that too eager grin when he said, "Travel comfortably," it flashed in my memory, chilling me to the bone. I felt suddenly vulnerable, exposed like a raw nerve. People rushed past me, their faces blurred by their own urgency, their own destinations. Nobody looked at the middle-aged woman standing alone next to 3 large bags. I was invisible. I was furniture. Then a sudden sharp ding from an announcement speaker. "The 3:45 to Harrisburg is now boarding at Gate 4. That was my train. That was our train. I sprinted toward the main information board, my heart slamming against my ribs. I had to find Michael. I had to stop this. As I rounded a newsstand, I saw him. He wasn't on the platform. He was near the far exit, talking urgently into his phone, standing next to a black taxi. And then I saw the luggage. Not the train luggage cart. The 2 big suitcases and my precious backpack were already loaded into the trunk of the taxi. He finished his call, looked right at the pile of bags being shoved into the taxi trunk, and let out a sigh of relief. He checked his watch again, but this time he looked satisfied. He didn't look nervous. He looked triumphant. And then he turned and walked toward the train entrance, but not toward me. He walked straight through the gate, alone. He left me. He used the bags to justify leaving me stranded, and then he left the bags too. I felt the blood drain from my face. I wanted to scream his name, but no sound came out. It was a physical punch in the gut, the betrayal so sharp it stole my breath. Why would he do this? I stumbled back toward the spot where I had been standing, my legs suddenly weak. My eyes were tearing up, but I forced myself to stop the crying. Crying wouldn't help. I needed to think. I needed a plan. I walked over to a nearby bench and sat down, clutching my useless little clutch purse. I was miles from home. No transportation money. No communication device. No keys. And the person who did this was the one person in the world who was supposed to love me unconditionally. I looked around the bustling station, feeling utterly hopeless. I was in a sea of people, but completely alone. It was then, sitting there trying to process the unbelievable cruelty, that I realized I needed help. But how do you ask for help when you can't even dial a number? The thought of what he planned for me to do made my stomach churn. He knew I couldn't just walk home. He knew I'd be desperate. This was about those papers, those legal documents he wanted me to sign. He must have figured that stranded, hungry, and exhausted, I'd be forced to contact him, and he'd only come to my rescue if I agreed to whatever terms he demanded. He was blackmailing his own mother into signing over her assets by using abandonment and fear. I looked down at my hands. They were trembling. I took a deep breath. I wouldn't let him win. But what was my first move? Who do you trust in a place like this? I was scanning the crowd for anyone who looked remotely trustworthy. A police officer, a security guard, anyone, when a voice broke through the haze of my panic. Ma'am. I looked up. Standing over me was an elderly man, maybe in his late 70s, wearing a tweed blazer that was a little frayed at the cuffs and a kindly, slightly rumpled expression. He had a stack of well-worn books under one arm. Ma'am, are you all right? I've been watching you. You look like you've just seen a ghost. I hesitated. Should I tell a stranger? Would he think I was crazy? I'm fine, I lied weakly, my voice catching. He didn't move. He just looked at me with an unervingly perceptive gaze. He pointed a crooked finger toward the far exit, the one Michael had just used with the taxi. If you're watching this video, pause right now and drop a comment telling me the exact time and place you're tuning in from. Let me know where in the world you are experiencing my personal nightmare. The elderly man leaned in conspiratorially. That young man you were with, he said softly, the one who loaded the bags into the black cab? He wasn't catching a train, was he? He was running an errand. A very cruel errand. He paused, his eyes narrowing slightly. I saw him look back at you. He didn't look concerned, ma'am. He looked relieved. And that look, he said, shaking his head slowly, that is not the look of a son who loves his mother. My jaw dropped. A stranger saw it. A stranger witnessed the whole despicable charade. He stepped closer, his voice dropping even lower, filling me with a strange, immediate sense of security. Ma'am, your son will regret this. I promise you. And just like that, the fight came back into me. If a complete stranger had more faith in my worth than my own flesh and blood, then I was darn well going to prove him right. The elderly man's words, your son will regret this, were like a shot of adrenaline straight into my heart. It was the validation I desperately needed, the proof that I wasn't just being paranoid or dramatic. A witness to my son's calculated cruelty. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw kind eyes crinkled at the corners from years of smiling. Thank you, I managed, the first honest word I'd spoken since Michael drove off. My name is Evelyn. And you're absolutely right. He left me here. With nothing. No phone, no money, no way to get home. The man extended his hand. Please call me Mr. Peterson. And don't you worry, Evelyn. We'll figure this out. Now tell me, why would a young man leave his mother stranded like this? It's not something you see every day, thank goodness. As I started to explain, the full weight of the backstory settled on me. You see, Michael wasn't always this way. He was my sweet boy, my little shadow. His father, bless his soul, passed away when Michael was only 10. It was sudden, a massive heart attack, and it left us completely adrift. I was a stay-at-home mom, suddenly thrust into being the sole provider, the emotional bedrock, and the repairman for a broken furnace all at once. I had always prioritized Michael. Always. Everything I did, every single decision was filtered through the lens of, how will this benefit Michael's future? If I had to take 2 jobs, I took them. If it meant wearing the same coat for 10 winters so he could have the latest computer for school, I wore it with pride. Our family home, the one Michael was so keen to get his hands on, was my anchor. It was the one piece of security I had left after my husband died. It wasn't fancy, just a cozy 3-bedroom house on a decent lot in a quiet neighborhood. But the location, as always, was the key. Over the last 20 years the area had boomed. What was once a modest working-class home was now sitting on land valued at nearly $1 million. It was all I had left to pass down. Michael grew up with this expectation of inheritance. I never shielded him from the truth of our financial situation. The house was valuable, but the savings were thin. And that was the root of the problem. He was impatient. He'd graduated from college, racked up debt, and then started several groundbreaking business ventures that all crashed and burned spectacularly. Each time I stepped in, I cashed out a small life insurance policy to help him cover his first failed startup. I took out a second mortgage on the house, a small one just for him, to finance his revolutionary app idea that, surprise, never revolutionized anything. The money, I explained to Mr. Peterson, my voice thick with lingering shame and frustration. It's always about the money. He wants to leverage the house, but he can't without my signature, and I've always refused to sell or mortgage it heavily. I told him he could have the house, yes, eventually, but not while I'm still alive. It's my security. Michael had been pressuring me relentlessly for the last 6 months. He wanted to start a big capital-intensive project. Something about real estate flipping this time. He needed a massive cash injection, and he believed the easiest way to get it was to sell the house, take his cut immediately, and move me into a small, cheap apartment outside the city limits. He said he was worried about my health and wanted to move me closer to the hospital. I scoffed, shaking my head. Lies. All lies. He wanted me out of the way so he could cash in. Mr. Peterson listened patiently, nodding occasionally. Ah, the classic story. The golden child turns to brass when the inheritance looms. So these papers he wanted you to sign, they weren't about a trust, were they? No, I whispered. I think they were documents authorizing the sale or a huge loan against the house. He set up this whole charade. He promised comfort, took my bags, which is how he got my phone and wallet, and left me here. He knew I'd panic. He thought I'd call him, desperate, begging for rescue, and he'd show up like the hero holding those documents saying, "Sign this, Mom, and I'll take you home and give you dinner." It was coercion, plain and simple. The irony was crushing. I had spent 20 years sacrificing every comfort, every personal dream, to ensure his well-being, his education, his future stability. I denied myself trips, new clothes, and even decent groceries sometimes, all so Michael could have the best footing in life. I had been a martyr, and he had taken my sacrifice and weaponized it against me. Mr. Peterson gently placed his hand over mine. Evelyn, you need to understand something important. Your love was boundless, but sometimes, boundless love can create a boundless sense of entitlement. He doesn't see you as his mother. He sees you as an obstacle, a financial roadblock. That's his failure, not yours. His words, delivered so calmly, started to chip away at the crushing self-blame I felt. I looked at the bustling station again, but this time the panic was replaced by a slow, simmering rage. Michael wanted to win. Michael wanted to leverage my desperation. I was Evelyn. I was the woman who raised him single-handedly after tragedy. I was tough. I need to get home, I said, my voice suddenly firm. I don't need a ride to his apartment to sign his predatory papers. I need to get back to my house and secure my assets. And that, my dear, Mr. Peterson smiled, is precisely what we are going to do. He started to explain his plan, which was remarkably simple, born of common sense and a kind heart. He wasn't rich, he admitted, but he was a regular commuter and he had cash. I can buy you a ticket for the next train, he said. It won't be as fast as the express your son booked, but it will get you within a few miles of your home. And then we can figure out the last leg. A stranger. A man I met 3 minutes ago, offering to spend his own money to help me, while my own son was likely halfway across the state, celebrating his anticipated victory. The contrast was stark and brutal. Mr. Peterson, I don't know how to repay you, I stammered, overwhelmed. He waved his hand dismissively. Nonsense. The repayment is you getting home safely and showing that boy that his mother is smarter than he thinks. Now, how far is your home from the station where this regional train stops? We went through the logistics. The next regional train, the 4:15, would stop at a station called Glenwood, about 40 miles from my house. It was miles, but 40 miles was better than 300. I still had the problem of the final leg, the lack of a phone, and the house keys locked inside the backpack Michael had taken. But solving the transport was the critical first step. Mr. Peterson walked me over to the ticket counter. He pulled out a worn leather wallet and counted out the exact fare. As he handed the ticket to me, a small, flimsy piece of paper that felt like a lifeline, he gave me one more piece of crucial advice. "Evelyn," he said seriously, "when you get to Glenwood, don't ask for money or a ride. Ask if you can use their phone to call a taxi service, explain the situation, and offer to pay them back. A person is more likely to give you a moment of their time and access to a resource than they are to give you cash. The taxi will take credit card over the phone if you can get a kind soul to call your bank on a landline." He looked at the clock. "Your train is boarding now. You go. Be strong. Don't worry about those papers. He hasn't won yet." I hugged him, a spontaneous, tearful hug that surprised us both. I didn't care. He was my guardian angel. As I walked toward the platform, the narrative I had been carrying for 20 years, the narrative of the sacrificing mother whose only goal was her son's happiness, began to crumble. I wasn't just Michael's mother. I was Evelyn. And Evelyn was about to show Michael exactly what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness. What he didn't know, what I hadn't told Mr. Peterson yet, was that the trust papers Michael thought he was forcing me to sign were now completely irrelevant. Michael's plan was based on the belief that I was cornered and helpless. But what he didn't realize was that weeks ago, sensing his mounting impatience and hostility, I had taken a preemptive, highly protective step. I had already rewritten my entire will. I settled into the hard plastic seat of the regional train, watching the city rush away from the window. The train was slow, clunky, and smelled faintly of diesel and stale coffee, but to me it felt like the most luxurious escape vehicle in the world. I clutched the ticket Mr. Peterson bought me. That little piece of cardstock was proof that not all humans were self-serving monsters. As the buildings gave way to suburban sprawl and then finally to fields, the rage solidified into cold determination. I kept running Michael's conversation through my mind. His sickeningly sweet tone, his insistence on traveling comfortably, his hasty retreat with my bags. It was all a theatrical performance designed to ensure my complete incapacitation. He wanted me desperate and compliant. What kind of son does this? That's the question that kept echoing in the empty space where my heart used to be. I spent the first hour of the ride piecing together the timeline of his betrayal, and the secondary challenges I now faced, the true layered conflict. Challenge 1. The house keys. My keys were in the backpack. If I got home I couldn't get inside. The spare key, I remembered with a fresh wave of nausea, was hidden under the fake rock by the porch. I had told Michael about that spot years ago, a memory I now regretted sharing. If Michael was truly malicious, he would race back and try to secure the house himself, perhaps even change the locks, banking on the fact that I was still stranded and wouldn't be able to contest it immediately. I needed to get there faster than him. Challenge 2. Proof and contact. I had no phone. I couldn't call the police, I couldn't call a locksmith. I couldn't even call a neighbor to ask them to check on the house. This lack of communication was the true genius of Michael's plan. It rendered me completely mute and powerless. I had to rely solely on the kindness of strangers. Challenge 3. The trap. I knew Michael had a lawyer prepared. He would expect me to call his number, distraught and starving, ready to surrender. He would probably be waiting by his phone, smugly anticipating my eventual call to concede. If I called him first, I'd give him the upper hand. I had to maintain radio silence and execute my own strategy without his knowledge. But then, as the train pulled into a small country station, I saw a woman struggling with a massive stroller and 2 toddlers. She was red-faced and overwhelmed. That tiny, relatable moment, the universal struggle of a parent, snapped me back to reality. I used to be that person just trying to keep it together. And that's when the memory of my proactive move came flooding back, stronger and clearer than before. I had smelled the betrayal coming. Not this specific plot, but the intent. Michael had become increasingly aggressive in his demands, treating my home less like my property and more like his personal ATM. About a month ago, a friend of mine, a wonderful woman named Diane who works in estate planning, told me about a cautionary tale involving a similar situation. An impatient heir trying to force an elder out. Diane advised me, "Evelyn, if you feel pressured, the best thing you can do is silently protect yourself." So I did. I quietly went to Diane's office. I didn't tell Michael. I didn't tell anyone. I took the original will, which split everything 50-50 between Michael and a few charitable causes I supported, and I changed it completely. The new will was a masterpiece of legal protection. It stipulated that Michael would only inherit the house if he proved he had provided continuous and substantial care for me in my old age, and if I was still living in the house at the time of my passing. If the house was sold before my death, or if I was moved to a facility without my express written notarized consent, the entire estate, the house, the savings, everything, would be liquidated and transferred entirely to those 4 specific charities. It was a poison pill, a fail-safe designed to discourage exactly the kind of move Michael was making. Baker. I had already signed the papers, and the final executed, legally binding document was locked away in a safe deposit box at my local bank. Michael was trying to use a fake trust signing to corner me into signing documents related to an old will or a predatory loan, thinking I still had the power to change things. What he didn't know was that the power had already been exercised, and the terms were now ironclad and irreversible without my signature, which I would never give. His desperate plan to abandon me was fundamentally flawed because his victory condition, my signing of those papers, was utterly pointless. Knowing this, the urgency to get home wasn't about signing documents or even stopping a sale. It was about pure, sweet strategic revenge. It was about getting home, securing my physical space, and then contacting Diane to unleash the legal hammer. I needed to be safe, secure, and ready to watch his face when he realized his scheme had been for nothing, and in fact had ruined his entire inheritance. My stop, Glenwood, was approaching. The train slowed down, screeching slightly. As I gathered my thoughts, steeling myself for the second phase of my plan, I reminded myself of Mr. Peterson's kindness. I couldn't let his faith in me go to waste. I was going to use his advice, asked to use a phone not for money. I stepped off the train and onto the platform. Glenwood was a tiny, charming station, mostly deserted. I saw a small ticket booth closed for the afternoon, and a solitary elderly man sitting on a bench, meticulously carving a piece of wood. He looked up as I approached, his eyes twinkling. He was shorter than Mr. Peterson, but he had the same aura of quiet capability. This was my moment. The turning point depended on this interaction. "Excuse me, sir," I said, projecting confidence I didn't entirely feel. "I realize this is a terrible request, but I was just separated from my luggage and my son, who accidentally took my phone and wallet with him. I'm completely stranded. I don't need money, but could I please use your phone just for 1 minute? I need to call a cab service and explain that I have cash at home to pay them." The man put down his carving knife, looked me up and down, and then smiled. "Accidentally, you say? Well, dear, accidents happen. The phone booth is long gone, but my flip phone works just fine. You have the cab company number memorized." I knew the main local cab company number by heart. It was a risk asking a second stranger, but I had no choice. I had to bet on the inherent goodness of people. I took the phone and dialed. This was the moment of rising drama, relying entirely on trust and quick thinking to overcome the layered conflict Michael had engineered. If this failed, I was back to square one. The elderly man at the Glenwood station, whose name I later learned was Stan, handed me his worn flip phone. My hands were shaking slightly, not from fear anymore, but from the realization that this simple act of calling a cab was the bridge between my utter helplessness and my triumphant return. I dialed the number for Riverside Taxis from memory. A tired but professional voice answered. "Riverside Taxis, can I help you?" "Yes, thank you. My name is Evelyn, and I need a cab immediately to an address near the city. About 40 miles, maybe more. Here's the situation. I've been separated from my belongings and I have no cash or credit cards with me. Everything is at home. Is there any way I can pay you via phone once I'm in the cab? Or perhaps if I call my bank's customer service and give them my debit card number to process over the phone? I promise I have the funds, I just don't have the physical card." There was a long silence and I held my breath, preparing for the inevitable rejection. Finally, the dispatcher sighed. "Ma'am, we don't usually do this. But it sounds like you're in a real pickle. We have a driver, Carl, heading your way now. Tell you what, we can take a credit card payment over the phone only once you are at your house. But you have to let Carl witness you retrieving the card from inside the house before you call us. Fair enough. If not, he brings you back." "Fair enough." I nearly shouted with relief. "Thank you. I live at 412 Oak Lane. I'll be waiting with the man who let me use his phone." I handed the phone back to Stan, thanking him profusely. He just nodded, his eyes warm. Go get him, Evelyn. That boy needs a lesson in common decency. 20 minutes later, the cab, driven by a taciturn but polite man named Carl, dropped me in front of my house. And here was the crucial turning point. I looked at the porch where my entire life, my security, my memories, my stand against Michael, was contained. First, I checked the obvious. I tiptoed to the front window. The house was dark. Good. Michael hadn't beaten me back. He was probably still celebrating his victory, maybe at a fancy restaurant, drafting the predatory legal papers, confident I was broken and desperate. Second, the key. I bent down and casually touched the fake landscaping rock I'd placed years ago next to the giant hydrangea bush. It was heavy, smooth, and easily distinguishable from the real ones. I lifted it. The small, tarnished brass key was exactly where I left it. Relief washed over me in a massive, dizzying wave. Michael hadn't thought to drive back and secure the house by changing the locks. He was too reliant on his initial strategy of abandonment. He underestimated my tenacity. Carl, I said, holding up the key to the driver who was leaning against his cab, observing me. I'm going to go inside, grab my wallet and purse, and come straight back out to call your dispatcher and settle the bill. You keep the motor running. He nodded once, expressionless. I unlocked the front door. The satisfying click of the tumbler turning was the sweetest sound I had ever heard. I was home. I was safe. I didn't bother turning on the lights. I walked straight into the kitchen where my actual purse, the one I keep hidden for emergencies, containing my spare phone, my actual wallet with cash and credit cards, and crucially the safe deposit box key, was stashed deep inside a box of old baking supplies. I retrieved the purse, pulled out the phone, and turned it on. It buzzed immediately with notifications. 2 missed calls from an unknown number and a handful of texts, all from Michael. I ignored the texts for a moment. I went back outside to the taxi driver. I paid Carl his fare and then some. Thank you, Carl. Truly. You saved me. He gave me a rare, small smile. Just doing my job, ma'am. Be safe. He drove off, leaving me standing alone on my front lawn, holding the purse that contained my battle plan. Now I was armed. I had transport, communication, money, and most importantly, the key to the only thing Michael valued, my assets. I walked back into the silent house and sat down heavily on the sofa. I opened Michael's texts. They were exactly what I expected, feigned concern layered over smug malice. Michael, 4:30 p.m. Mom, where are you? I'm so worried. We missed the train. Did you get lost? Call me immediately. Michael, 5:15 p.m. I'm heading back to the city now. I'll wait for you at my apartment. Call me as soon as you find a payphone. Are you okay? The bags are safe here. Eli, of course. He'd left them at the city taxi station. Michael, 6 p.m. I can't wait all night. I have those trust papers here. If you just come and sign them, I can drive you straight home. We can talk. The last text sent just an hour ago was the most transparent. Michael, 6:30 p.m. If you don't call by tomorrow morning, I'm going to assume you're refusing to cooperate. Don't make this harder than it has to be, Mom. Your security depends on this. His arrogance was breathtaking. He believed I was still stranded, desperate, and cold. He was waiting for me to cave and beg him to save me, documents in hand. I didn't reply. I didn't want him to know I was free. I wanted him to stew in his confidence. The first person I called wasn't Michael. It was Diane, my estate lawyer. She answered immediately. Evelyn, is everything all right? You sound frantic. Diane, listen carefully. I need you to confirm something for me. The new will, the one we signed 3 weeks ago, is it 100% legally binding? The one that puts the property into a charitable trust if I sell the house without certain conditions. Yes, Evelyn. It was executed perfectly. The original copy is in your safe deposit box, and a certified copy is locked in my office safe. Why? Because, I said, my voice dropping into a low, steady register of pure, cold resolve. My son just tried to abandon me 300 miles away so I'd be forced to sign papers that he thought were necessary to secure his inheritance. He doesn't know about the new will. He doesn't know that his plan was completely pointless and in fact an incredible act of foolishness. Diane gasped. Evelyn, are you safe? I'm sitting on my sofa in my home, Diane. Now here's what I need you to do. First, I need you to send a formal, certified letter of communication to Michael's lawyer, the one he's using for this fake trust. I want the letter to state simply and clearly that as of 3 weeks ago, all former estate planning documents have been superseded by a final and irrevocable will, and that any attempts to coerce or force the sale of the property will trigger the clause transferring the entirety of the estate to the specified charities. I paused, picturing Michael's face when he realized his whole scheme had backfired. And second, I continued, I want you to send an official letter to Michael himself. Don't mention the will yet. I want you to simply inform him that he has 3 days to return my missing property, my phone, wallet, keys, and personal belongings, or I will be filing a formal police report for grand theft and reckless abandonment of an elderly person. The chase was over. The game had just changed. Michael thought he was playing checkers. I was playing three-dimensional chess with a fully executed legal contract. He would soon realize that by acting on his impatience he hadn't just secured his inheritance. He had potentially lost everything. The next morning I woke up feeling a profound sense of peace mixed with a chilling anticipation. The house felt warm and secure, a fortress against the outside world and against the entitled son who had tried to lock me out of my own life. I made a strong cup of coffee, turned off the notifications on my spare phone so Michael couldn't track me, and settled in to wait for the legal machinery to start grinding. The silence was delicious. I didn't reach out to Michael. I let him stew in his imagined victory, believing I was still cowering somewhere, desperate for his rescue and willing to sign anything. Around noon Diane called. Her voice was sharp with professional satisfaction. Evelyn, the certified letter was delivered to Michael's attorney an hour ago. I also sent Michael's personal letter, the one about the missing property and the police report deadline, via courier. He should receive it within the next hour. Excellent, Diane. Now we wait for the fireworks. The fireworks started precisely 45 minutes later. My spare phone, which I had only put on silent, showed 10 missed calls from Michael in the span of 10 minutes. Then came the texts, which had shifted dramatically from feigned concern to sheer, unadulterated panic. Michael, 1:15 p.m. What is this? What is this letter about a police report? Where are you? This isn't funny. I told you the bags are safe. Michael, 1:17 p.m. Who did you contact? Did that old man at the station call someone? He knew the old man saw something. The snake was starting to panic. Michael, 1:20 p.m. I just talked to my lawyer. He said he got a confusing letter. Did you sign something else? You wouldn't. We talked about this. Call me now. This was the beginning of the end of his arrogant facade. But I waited. I wanted him to suffer the full weight of the realization. The climax of the drama came when he finally showed up at my house late that afternoon. He didn't call, he just showed up, screeching to a halt in his ridiculous sports car. He was out of the vehicle before the engine was off, holding my 3 pieces of luggage, the 2 large suitcases in my backpack, as if they were evidence of his innocence. He hammered on the door. Oh, open up. We need to talk. I brought your things. It was all a misunderstanding. I walked slowly to the door and opened it just enough to block the threshold. He looked haggard, his designer jacket rumpled, his face pale. The swagger was completely gone, replaced by desperation. Misunderstanding, Michael? I asked, my voice calm and low. You stranded your own mother 300 miles from home without a phone, keys, or money, hoping to blackmail her into signing over her only asset. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a criminal act. He shoved the bags at my feet. No. I just needed to talk to you without distractions. I panicked. But look, here are your things. Keys, phone, everything. I dropped them off at my apartment as soon as we missed the train. I was just trying to secure them. I pointed to my backpack. My phone was dead when I got back last night, Michael. My house keys were in there. How did you expect me to get into my home? He stammered. I assumed you had a spare or you would call me and I'd bring them to you. You assumed I'd be desperate enough to agree to your terms, Michael, I corrected, stepping back slightly to show him I wasn't yielding. Let's stop pretending. Your lawyer knows. The one you hired for your little trust fund charade. He now knows that any move you make against this property or against me will trigger the final clause of my new will. His eyes widened in true terror. New will? What new will? You didn't. Mom, you wouldn't. The original split everything. The charities only got a token percentage. The new will, Michael, I said softly, delivering the final crushing blow. stipulates that if I am pressured, coerced, or moved out of this home against my express notarized consent, the entire estate, the house, the savings, everything I worked for, goes to those 4 specified charities. Everything. You would get nothing. 0. The blood drained from his face completely. He slumped against the doorframe, his sophisticated act utterly shattered. He realized the scale of his foolishness. By acting out of greedy impatience, he hadn't just wasted his time. He had annihilated his future. The leverage he thought he had was the very thing that had disinherited him. You did this because I needed a loan, he whispered, staring at the ground. No, Michael. I did this because you stopped seeing me as your mother and started seeing me as an obstacle. You thought you could use me, abandon me, and manipulate me. You forced my hand. You asked for this outcome. You tried one last time. Mom, please. Can we change it? We can go back to Diane. I'll apologize. I'll never ask for money again. The will is final and irrevocable, Michael, I said, my voice firm. You will not inherit this house unless you are actively, genuinely taking care of me in my old age, and unless I pass away while still living here. And after yesterday, Michael, I don't trust you to bring me a glass of water, let alone care for me. You have forfeited your right to my trust and your right to my estate. I looked at the luggage, then back at him, feeling a deep sadness for the boy he used to be, but absolutely no remorse for the man he had become. Take your belongings, Michael. I want you to leave this property and not contact me unless it's through Diane's office. If you try to harass me or enter this house again, I will file that police report for theft and abandonment. I have 2 witnesses to your actions, Michael, 2 good men who saw exactly what you did. He stood there, frozen, the weight of his actions finally crashing down on him. He picked up his bags in stunned silence, his shoulders defeated. He didn't say goodbye. He simply walked back to his car, got in, and drove away, leaving a scorched circle of gravel where his wheels spun. That night I finally felt free. I called Mr. Peterson and Stan, the 2 strangers who had shown me more kindness than my own son. I promised to send them a small reward and thank them for giving me the courage to fight back. The resolution wasn't a cozy reunion. It was a cold, hard lesson in consequence. Michael lost the inheritance he was so desperate for, not because I was vindictive, but because his own greed and cruelty triggered the legal safety net I had wisely put in place. The thought-provoking question that lingered was, did I lose a son or did I finally gain back my life? The answer I realized was both. I lost the illusion of a loving son, but I reclaimed my dignity, my home, and my peace. And that, dear listeners, was worth more than $1 million piece of land. If you liked this story of a mother finding her power and dealing out some justified revenge, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel for more tales like this, and drop a comment below letting me know what you would have done in my position.